Welcome back. In this part we are going to work a bit more with classes, but first let's change our button text a bit. Let's change it to exit instead of bye, and the tooltip will be goodbye. You can close it now. As for the classes, we already have one class called animal, which we use for default information extraction. So this isn't actually our pet instance during the game. We use it only during pet selection. So what I want to do now is, in our user control game, we have a lot of variables which are duplicated from user control select pet, and we have to constantly transfer all of these variables. So in order to avoid it, we can simply create another class that will be used for our pet during the game, and it will be used via these transitions between user controls. So let's start. First, let's create a new class. Add class. So let's call it single pet. Why I called it single? First of all, we already have pet as namespace, so first of all, it's for the sake of avoiding ambiguity, and secondly, we have a lot of parameters for a single pet. So let's group them into a separate class for a pet. We will do as follows. First, we will copy all of these parameters and paste them here. Now we will separate them line by line and replace commas with semicolon. Because we will use this class in two different user controls, we will need to make it public. In addition, we will access and change all of these values, so let's make all of them public. Let's rename our variables, which are, by the way, called fields in classes, to make them comply to naming conventions. You should know that it is often recommended to not use public variables at all and use properties instead, but I can't really agree with that. But for the very least, let's remove these underscore characters, so it will be pet name. Next, let's give it a summary and take it from here. Okay, now let's rename it to total days, and by default it will be equal to 15. Let's rename underscore happiness to just happiness, and by default it will be 15 as well. Let's rename happiness bonus, and as always, do not use abbreviations. Happiness bonus. If we do not assign it, by default it is equal to 0. Rename underscore hunger to hunger, underscore hunger modifier to hunger modifier. The default hunger modifier will be 2. Let's rename description underscore pet to pet description. The same for description age, so age description. Now let's go to our user control game. Now let's add an instance of this class to our variables. So it will be private single pet. This is the name of our class, and the name of our instance will be M single pet. M stands for private member. Now we can change our constructor. Instead of all of this, we can simply type single pet and its name. Instead of all of these variables, we actually need to assign only this one. So M single pet equals single pet. Now we can easily remove all of these. Now, because our previous parameters are now all inside of this class instance, we first need to access it, or we can access this one. It doesn't matter actually. M single pet period pet. Inside of it we have different fields like age description, and all of them are accessible because we added the public modifier to each of them. We just need to add it, and we also renamed it. So pet description, change description age to age description, and here instead of just pet, add M single pet period pet. And now we can remove our unnecessary fields. from this class. So let's remove mTotalDays, and also mHappiness bonus, mHunge modifier, and also mPetName. Now we need to reference our mSinglePet here as well. So mSinglePet total days, mSinglePet pet name. So now I'm just fast forwarding the whole process of changing names and adding reference to mSinglePet. mHappiness to happiness, mHappiness bonus to SinglePet happiness bonus, mHappiness change it to mSinglePet happiness, mHunge to mSinglePet Hunge, mTotalDays to total days, mTotalDays to total days, mTotalDays to SinglePet total days, and here as well. mHappiness change it to mSinglePet happiness, change mHunge to mSinglePet Hunge, the same here. Okay, let's move on. Happiness bonus change it to mSinglePet happiness bonus, the same here. mHunge modifier change it to mSinglePet Hunge modifier, and finally mHunge change it to mSinglePet Hunge, the same here. Finally. So by doing all of this, we are now able to simply transfer a bunch of such variables using a single class instance. But actually we aren't using it effectively by now, because we are still passing a lot of variables in user control selectPet, and actually it should show an error. So let's go to it. And here we see the error that it doesn't contain a constructor that takes 10 arguments. So what we need to do here is again create a new private variable, private SinglePet, and the name mSinglePet, and we will just pass it here. But of course it has its default values, which aren't affected by the choices made in selectPet. So we need to change all the fields with references to mSinglePet and its fields. So first let's remove the unnecessary variables. All of them are here, and now let's work on it. So mPetName will be mSinglePet pet name, mTotalDays will be replaced by mSinglePet total days. Change mHunge modifier to mSinglePet Hunge modifier. Change mHappiness to mSinglePet happiness, total days to mSinglePet total days. Happiness bonus to mSinglePet happiness bonus. mTotalDays to mSinglePet total days. mHunge to mSinglePet Hunge. mTotalDays. And finally mHappiness. If you look at the SinglePet class, we actually have 4 variables that were not present among the variables that we removed. So where do we actually set them? We set them right before we call the constructor, right here. We need to access our pet description, age, and age description right before we pass this class instance. So mSinglePet.pet equals pet. So this is the class field, and this is a local variable which we create here. The same with age description and age description. Let's duplicate it. Then pet description taken from description, then goes age, and the local variable has the same name, and finally age description, and the local name is description age. So let's check whether everything works as it was before. So let's start. Okay, we got an error, and I know why. Because we created the class but haven't initialized it. We have a warning saying that the field mSinglePet is never assigned to and will always have its default value null, and we cannot access fields of a null instance. So in order to initialize it, just type new SinglePet, and that's it. Let's check it again. QWERTY kitty 12 months. Okay, good. QWERTY kitty 12 months. So the reason why it worked in SelectPet and still worked in user control game even without initialization is because we never access it before we assign it to a already initialized class instance, and we assign it right in the constructor before we actually access it. So we have successfully replaced 8 parameters for a single pet with a separate class. We have also got rid of the fields into user controls. By doing so, we are now able to transfer a lot of information with one structured class instance. Thanks for watching. Subscribe to see more tutorials.